Hi, this is Steve Gillmor. Welcome to the Gillmor Gang. Today we're going to bring in some people from the state of Colorado. I don't know quite where these people are, but we will identify them starting with, to my right, Kevin Marks and JP Rangaswami.
Hi there.
Hi.
These folks are both from British Telecom, now known as BT. Does that mean that you're no longer Telecom, like KFC is no longer chicken?
Pretty much. We're a services company.
All right. Next, we have from the Gray Lady, the old Gray Lady, perhaps the new Gray Lady, the New York Times. We have Saul Hansell. Welcome, Saul.
Oh, it's great to be here.
Next, we have from the new New York Times, Michael Arrington. And then last but certainly not least, we have Robert Scoble.
Hey, what's up?
Okay.
Hey, Rob.
All right, so get a little housekeeping out of the way. Saul, you used to be the editor of the bit section. You may be still for another couple of days, right? Can you tell us what you're doing now?
Yeah, since really the end of the summer, I have been covering on Telecom. Matt Richtel, who used to do that, is working on some special projects, and I've thrown myself in. So I cover getting information from here to there, be it over radio waves or over wires, cable TV, broadband, lots and lots of cell phones, a little bit of FCC policy and stuff like that.
All right, so cell phones. Mike Arrington, you've had this issue with cell phones for a little while now. Can you hold up whichever phone you're actually using now?
Yeah, sure. Well, this is my old iPhone. I don't know if you can see the. Oh, can you see the cracks in it? So.
And
I
continued
to use it for quite a while because I wanted to wait and get this, which is the new Droid.
Okay, so this is the one that. What does it do exactly? It runs Google Voice, right?
It makes phone calls, which is nice. Something the iPhone isn't able to do sometimes. The call quality is excellent, and even Robert Scoble, who wrote a love letter to the iPhone the other day, said that the call quality on the Verizon network with the Droid was excellent. So that's the first thing it does. The other thing it does is it has a bigger screen with higher resolution than the iPhone. It's a great screen. It does everything that the iPhone does better, in my opinion, and it also integrates with Google Voice perfectly. So it's.
So how come it looks like one of those Russian modules from the from those old science fiction movies?
I don't know what you're talking about. I think it's an artist. It's a piece of art. It's beautiful industrial design. It's about as. I mean, they took something that's about as thick as the iPhone. It's almost exactly the same thickness, and they put a keyboard in it. I mean, how do you do that? So,
Well, I think that the visual thing that you're showing right now tends to belie the argument that it's almost the same thickness.
No, it's hard because the iPhone...
It looks twice as thick.
Well, no, I think it does look twice as thick, but they're almost exactly the same thickness if you look at any pictures online.
You know what? The iPhone has the tapered edges, and it feels thinner in your pocket. The Droid is thin and thinner than any other slider phone, but I just went back to using my iPhone for a couple of days, and it feels good in your hand. Not that that I think there's anything all that wrong with the Droid. I've got a question for Robert and Michael, though. When I used the Droid, I kept getting these DOS-like error messages. Some process got stopped and a little dialog box where I had to wait or okay. Have any of you guys gotten these weird error messages and crashes?
I haven't, not yet. I don't agree with Arrington though. There are things that are better about this phone, and he covered them, right? Verizon is way better. It's almost worth giving up the iPhone just to get Verizon, and the screen is beautiful, sharp, right? I mean, you can get a lot more info density on the screen, and you can get smaller fonts and stuff, which if your eyes are bad, it might be bad, but I just don't like using it. It's not as smooth. Scrolling it around is not as smooth as the iPhone. It doesn't feel like it's a put-together product. It feels like a bunch of bags of technology that just don't work very well together. In fact, when I first got my Droid, I opened up YouTube, and we played video with it next to a Palm Pre, next to an iPhone, and this looks like crap. And the trick is you need to know how to go into YouTube and turn on the high-res video, but the other two are already turned on by default. This is a Google OS, and they can't even make their own software work nicely on it.
I don't think Google is an A-plus company at user interface, and you can see that here. They do okay, simple user interfaces. I think Android doesn't beguile you. It's there. You can do stuff with it. I absolutely agree with Robert. The fit and finish isn't like a Palm or especially like the iPhone. There are a couple of places where what Google does have, which is some deep engineering talent, shows up. I think the search that goes through the whole thing, it's not quite finished yet, as the whole thing isn't quite finished. But the promise you see of being able to voice search anything, you're walking down the street, you say Starbucks, and then the little maps appear. I think the whole the UI and the depth of the product on the navigation. So what you have is very different companies with very different strengths.
Even the keyboard, Saul, even the keyboard, when you type, it gives you choices. Like I just started typing new, and it gives me choices of different words that it thinks I might want to use, and that does speed up my typing. I really like little touches here and there, but overall, as a package, as a product, it just doesn't feel finished. It feels
Steve
like
Jobs
Windows
knows
1.
what word you're supposed to type. Steve only gives you one choice because that's the one you should type. And Google, the paradox of choice. So many I mean, I kept going back and forth. The Droid has, and all Android has 4 buttons: a home, a menu, a back, and a search button. And you get confused sometimes as to what you're supposed to do, but there's more stuff you can do. On the iPhone, there's no confusion, but back is always on a different place on the screen if you can do it. There's a trade-off here, and this is a geekier device. This is Android is clearly Windows to Apple's Apple. And
Okay,
hey, Mike, where are you? Get involved in here. I thought you were going to fight for the Android.
I'm disappointed because I think that you guys are discounting the fact that this is the most sophisticated phone ever created. It has so much hardware packed into such a small device that you're not giving it credit for the screen size, the screen resolution, the fact that it has a keyboard, the fact that it has the same processor technology as the iPhone. And so you're mad because it has a chin, or you don't think the design is as nice. I'm actually getting a little sick of this design. I think this is a beautiful device that's years old, and I'm sort of sick of seeing it.
Be honest. Don't you have dreams where you're using your iPhone again?
No, not since this device came.
Really?
Give me a break.
Mike,
Mike, let's talk about something else, Mike. You open up the Facebook app on iPhone and open up the Facebook app on Android, and the Facebook app on Android is ass. And
so how are we going to do this?
Same thing with the Twitter
How are we
apps.
going to do this? Are we going to do this where we cut each other off and we trash each other, or are we going to do this where we talk and we make points? Because I can do it either way, but I'm not going to do it where I'm your bitch, and every time I open my mouth, you cut me off. We can do it either way.
I didn't cut you off. You
You most certainly did.
Yeah, so I vote for the not being Scoble's bitch model.
So the main reason why I like this phone is that it integrates perfectly with Google Voice. I will not look at any phone at this point that doesn't have perfect Google Voice integration. And the reason is that my entire phone is now in the inbox on a Google page on Google Voice. I can send and receive text messages from that page. I can make calls from that page. It's amazing. And it's hard to describe exactly how good Google Voice is until you start using it. But it's the only thing that matters for phones with me now. And then I'm going to take the best phone after that's available.
All right, so Kevin Marks and JP Rangaswami, you've got this product called Ribbit, which is competitive with Google Voice. And can you tilt down a little bit like I asked? Thank you.
That's right. Is that better?
Yeah. So do you want to comment on the assertion that Google Voice is next to God, or is in fact God?
The idea definitely is. Now that's this is the same idea that we have, which is that telephony needs to become part of the computer, not a separate thing. You need to move voice back and forth between text and voice, to manipulate the stuff. And the stuff that the Ribbit mobile application that we launched last week does many of the same things. But the more interesting piece underneath that is the Ribbit platform that means anyone can put applications on top of telephony and connect stuff together. And that's the piece that Ribbit has that Google Voice doesn't have. No, Google Voice is basically, it's a product by Google. It's not a platform other people can build things on.
But realistically, Mike, do you think that you're going to get Apple to be able to unbundle voice services in the way that you seem to be trying to push them in the right direction?
I mean, at this point, I don't really care. If this phone is so good, see, you guys seem to think that like I'm choosing this phone to sort of somehow convince Apple that I'm serious about this voice stuff. This phone is amazing. I far prefer this phone to the iPhone. I love this keyboard. I love this screen. I love the fast scrolling on the browser. There's nothing about this device that I think is inferior to the iPhone at all. So this is
Mike?
I don't care anymore. Yeah.
Are you done so I can jump in and cut you off? The Twitter apps on the iPhone are so superior to the Twitter apps on this device. It's not even funny. And the Facebook app is so superior on the iPhone that it's not even funny. So I guess if the only thing you do is Google Voice, you're right. But
I have a great Twitter app and a great Facebook app on this phone. And it's called the browser.
They don't come even close to the UI and the cleanliness and the feature set of Tweety or Simply Tweet. I'm sorry, I can go face by face.
The browser is a better
Can I get in here for a second?
on the iPhone than the Facebook app is.
I don't know. Can you, Saul?
I mean, I think that the way to compare this is that remember that the Android platform is 3 years younger than the iPhone platform. And I think that what we really are seeing, compare the Droid to the iPhone 1. A lovely phone, but a lot of people will say that the iPhone, that the second generation of the iPhone added a lot of stuff. I agree with Mike. There's a lot to like on the Droid. It single-handedly restored Motorola's credibility. They've got a lot to, and it single-handedly really established Android's credibility. So it's a very important phone. But at the same time, I spent a lot of time with the Motorola people, and they talked a lot about how much they rushed the Droid and how it was meant to be a Windows mobile phone, and they didn't design it from the ground up. And Sanjay Jha will say, this is not a beautiful phone. He will say it is a simple, functional, honest phone, was his quote, and that he is hoping to make some beautiful phones. But I also think, to Robert's point, of course the software isn't good right now, the applications, because no rational developer was going to develop for Android with the small amount of users it had when they could develop for the iPhone. The question is, if the snowball starts rolling, and a year or two from now, this and all the other manufacturers...
A year or two? I mean, that's...
So there's two bits here.
It's a long-term play, guys, right? I mean, the ecosystems...
You mean like the Pre was a long-term play?
So hang on,
Tom Pre is playing a game that is a long-term game, and if they're going to be successful, it's by building a whole platform and a franchise. I'm not sure they will be, but that's
Go ahead, Kevin. Go ahead.
So I want to get a couple of things in here. Mike's right. The web is the platform. The original iPhone was the web in your pocket. That was what it brought. The apps were a secondary addition to that. They brought in after that. And what we're seeing now is that the web is still the platform on the phone, and all the other phones now give you great web browsing too. And I agree with Mike. I've been using the G1 for a year now, and I use it in the web much more than I use the native apps most of the time. My Twitter app on the G1 is a little thing called Nano Tweeter that just does, in the background, turns tweets into notifications on it, and then I click through and use the Twitter app in the browser because the browser is pretty good. And when I get a Droid tomorrow, I'll carry on that practice. I went to the G1 from the Sidekick, which it had a lot in common with, because my pocket device was for textual communication and browsing, and the Sidekick gave me that. And I didn't like the iPhone's keyboard enough to switch to that. So I haven't spent any time with an iPhone. I haven't switched like Mike has, but I've been very comfortable with this, and I spent more time with it. The other thing that I wanted to make was that you're comparing the sort of fit and finish of the two, and I think there's partly that reflects the difference in development model that Apple and Google have. Apple's development model is the classic operating system model where they ship a new release once a year or so, and do fit and finish and iterate on that, and then do small incremental releases in between. whereas Google's model is much more of a continuous integration idea.
Yeah,
And
it's called the
pretty
Microsoft model. They're basically they're going after Microsoft instead of after Nokia, who's dead, and and the iPhone is going to continue to win at the high end.
We'd all like to be dead as Nokia is, selling 500 million phones every year.
Yeah, but Microsoft's coming after them with what do you think they're going to announce next week in Los Angeles?
Who, Microsoft or Nokia?
I don't know where Nokia is going to be next week in Los Angeles. There's the PDC in Los Angeles, and they're going to be announcing something. They've got this strategy called 3 screens in a cloud, right?
Yep.
Okay, well, the 3 screens are the TV, the PC, and the mobile devices. So what are they going to announce about what's the 3rd screen?
They sure have a lot they need to do, obviously. They've been promising a super better version of Windows Mobile that they've run behind on, and they don't seem to actually be planning to have it out till the middle or late next year. Because it's Microsoft, they may well pre-announce it because they feel they have to counteract Android.
But if you're right, then this is a multi-year play, a long distance play on the part of Google. They're competing directly against Microsoft, and Microsoft's going to be coming out with Silverlight on the mobile platform on Tuesday or Wednesday. That will be my bet. And if they do that, there's an interesting possibility, which is what I really want to find out is what you guys think about this so-called argument between open and closed. I mean, I think that the reason that Mike went to the iPhone was away from the iPhone was because Google Voice was just being shut out on the so-called closed platform, the Apple platform, right? Okay, so what happens if, say, Silverlight is released in a compatible version for the so-called open Google platform? Anybody want to weigh in on that?
Microsoft can write a version of Silverlight for Android. It is open, and
in
Google's
fact,
very much set up.
Chrome supports Silverlight. They've done so from the beginning.
So Microsoft can certainly play on Android, and more even than Google can play on Windows Mobile. And Apple is the same as it's always been, right? Apple is sort of open, but in the ways that they feel like it. The App Store was an opening, more open than they were before, and that has worked out for them. But boy, do they keep a tight control in the ways they feel like it. And they have sold a couple of phones and a couple of computers and a couple of music players because that tight, loose balance hits a big segment of the market. It's probably not going to be the long-term appeal of any of the people on this podcast. I mean, I've been thinking a lot about the Droid. I think I'm going back to the iPhone for a while, partially because I've got a contract to fill out, but I like to tinker. And anybody who wants to tinker is not going to want to be ultimately in the Apple universe because they want to restrict that to make it easy.
Saul, isn't this like Windows 3.1, where when Windows 3.1 came out, it was still ugly. It wasn't put together as a good product, but you could tell the momentum, the developer momentum, was shifting and was going back toward the Microsoft platform. Here, it seems like Android is really exciting the developers. I mean, I talked with the founder of Pandora, and he says he's noticing great growth in Android. He thinks Android next year is going to be his premier platform, which is an amazing thing to say when you look at his download numbers, right? BlackBerry and iPhone have many more downloads per day on his service than Android does. But he's saying that Android's coming on strong, and he thinks Android next year is going to take over the world. What do you guys think about that?
I think Android is consolidating its role as number 3, which is really important, right? So you have Apple and you have RIM, which are dominating the smartphone market and are integrated manufacturers, operating system makers.
Who was that second one?
RIM, Research in Motion for the BlackBerry.
Oh,
which
yeah,
still
I
sells
remember
more than the iPhone. You write it off in this world.
Great web experience.
They're selling a lot of smartphones, $29 at Walmart, and they lousy for developers, although they're trying to get around to fix that. But anyway, the battle right now is between Microsoft and Android for the hearts and minds of the hardware companies that don't write their own software. Motorola, Samsung, LG, HTC. And Android is winning there, and until Microsoft, comes up with something that changes the game, Android is going to be a snowball in that whole segment. And so developers are going to write for it. I don't think that affects Apple a hell of a lot. I think it affects Microsoft and it affects the shape of the market. But it's a big market.
Mike Arrington, what do you think?
I think that this is not a proper. This is not. There's not an analogy to Windows and OS X or even the early days of that battle. The key, except for one part of it, which is that there are so many different Android devices coming out that there's no way Apple can compete over the long run. I mean, if you look at, I have another Android phone on my desk. This is the Motorola Click. It's a cheaper phone. I don't like it. It's also on the old chip. But just so many of these are coming that there's a tidal wave that Apple can't possibly compete with. And I believe that the next sort of killer phone may only be 2 months away or 3 months away. And we have a story coming up on what the next Droid is and what manufacturer Google's working with to build it. But in 3 or 4 months, this might look old and boring.
But each of those new machines has a small segment of the audience, as opposed to what Apple does, which is to have a very powerful user base that they continue to sell through to.
They combine that audience for purposes of app developers, so they have the benefit of that there. But I keep going back to Google Voice because I think more interesting than Android is Google Voice, and people who haven't used it don't understand that when you have your entire mobile experience sitting in a browser on your screen, and you can point your phone number to any phone you own. And when I'm at home, I point it to my home number. When I'm here, I point it to my office number and my cell phone number. And you can see missed calls, taken calls, voicemails transcribed, and everything on the screen. That is so amazing and so transformative in the way I use my mobile phone that I never want to leave that again. I would give up all the apps on the phone before I gave up Google Voice. I'd give up everything the phone does except maybe email and the phone calls before I gave up Google Voice. And so that's, to me, the real killer that Google has, is that Google Voice is going to be deadly competitive with the carriers, the handset manufacturers, et cetera, and they're going to be a real competitive force in mobile in the next couple of years.
What about maps? One thing I liked about the Android is they have turn-by-turn maps with the Street View. It's awesome. In fact, they sold me a holder for my windshield so I can put this up and actually look at the Street View maps. It's really much better than the Apple. I mean, there are some things that on the Android and on Droid are way better than the iPhone so far.
JP, can you weigh in here a little bit?
Sorry? Well, I think that we've been really discussing two quite separate subjects from my viewpoint. And I have to confess, while I've seen and touched and played with the Droid, I haven't really spent a lot of time on it. I'm all for the arguments I'm hearing so far on why Android will win as a platform. I'm a big believer in platform plays, and I do believe that the timescale issue is relevant, that we're seeing Android at a level of maturity that is not comparable with the iPhone. But when it comes to the handsets itself, what I've seen so far, the Droid interests me, but I wasn't interested in the earlier, the G1 type devices. And for sure, the HTC Hero has excited me, and I'm going to take a look at that much more carefully. But, I feel that the device market and the OS market are still two different discussions, and that convergence hasn't taken place. On the OS front, the importance of the application, the importance of integrating that application into the rest of your life, a bit like Mike was saying with what he's feeling with Google Voice, that's the play that we have gone for with Ribbit. That's a play that I completely believe in, and I think that's a play that has still got a lot to play out. Okay, Google has its own equivalent of a lock to me. The more open will win. I mean, we're in the week of Firefox's 5th birthday, and I wouldn't compare any other browser I'm playing with, but in the same way as I say, well, Firefox versus Chrome is going to be an interesting view because Chrome is still young, but I wouldn't compare the two today. So that's like comparing Apple versus the Android. I like the Android. I'm not yet convinced about the Droid.
But the interesting thing on the browser side is that these phones are all basically running the same browser in that they're all running WebKit. And the fact that Apple open sourced that and it became the basis for Chrome, for the browser in here, for the browser in the
And
pre.
hasn't the pre taken that as well?
Yes. So we now actually, the HTML5 and the richness of being able to build internet applications on that is really significant in this, and that gets round the do I have to write for this, do I have to write for that issue that was exercising Steve, because as Mike was saying, suddenly the apps in the browser become mainline apps become extraordinarily usable.
So you buy the idea that HTML5 exists in any real way?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, shipping.
Oh, please.
Shipping now.
Shipping now?
What? Where? Who?
On this phone and on the iPhone.
Thank you.
What phone was that? You can't go like this phone.
G1.
The G1, yeah.
And on your phone,
Oh, there it goes. It's the
It's on
Yeti
your Android,
of cell
dude.
phones.
It's on your Droid.
Yeah.
HTML5 is HTML plus a bunch of extensions to do more app development. That was the
Oh,
original
so
HTML for
if
web
H-
apps.
If
And those pieces.
HTML5 is running on this, then I can run video natively within the browser, which is awesome. I haven't noticed I could do that. That's amazing. Yeah, it's also bullshit. It doesn't exist. Like, no one is doing anything with this yet, right?
Yeah, what's the
So-
codec that you use that isn't a patent trap?
Well, the codec. There is a codec. There's a patent trap. So what you do is you use 264 for now, and wait. That's what works on both.
And that would be 264, which was pushed ubiquity by Google with YouTube and Apple with the iPhone.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So we're back to the iPhone again.
And Silverlight supports it too. It's
Oh,
if you
interesting.
want a codec that works everywhere now. You have to use 264. We don't have an open source one. You have to license it. You can license it. It costs you a few million a year to license it if you're a large company. So everyone has, basically.
Can we go back,
That's basic too.
Steve, with your permission, and tell me no if not, but can we go back to the comment about Firefox is the greatest browser? Because I'd love to take a quick show of hands to see what browsers we all actually use. Because Firefox is turned into the bane of my existence personally.
Well, it is pretty buggy these days.
I've switched to Safari.
Yeah, I'm on Safari. What's everyone else using?
Google Chrome and Safari.
What do you use Google Chrome on?
Windows and Macintosh.
What?
I have an alpha of it.
Oh, another.
Alpha
So
preview.
we've
He
got.
doesn't really use it. He just says he uses it. It's pretty
No,
much still on.
I'll take video
So-
tomorrow when I'm back home. You can see it. If I could put a
You have
mirror
to.
up, you would see.
You better
Google
call
Chrome
ahead and get
running
Rocky
right
to
there.
set it up so that it looks like you've been using it.
So I think the importance of what was set up to now, I mean, I raised the Firefox issue, is we didn't even mention IE, right? I use Firefox and Safari. I do not use IE. I have not used it for a while. It has become irrelevant to me. Now, Firefox is only 5 years old, right? And it was the age as only. If everyone accepts on this call that Firefox is irrelevant, then it's in a 5-year
Well,
period.
I don't think that anybody's
Sure.
saying it's irrelevant.
No, but
it's-
I disagree with your statement that actually your cliche that the more open you are, the more likely you are to win. I think we've seen time and time again that tends to be exactly wrong. I think the more open you are, the more people applaud you. But the iPod Touch isn't very open, and it's definitely win. And I think that we've seen this so many times that there's no real financial incentive for people to be open in general.
Mike, I think
But
that-
Mike, you've got to distinguish between device discussions and OS discussions again.
Yeah.
Because the iPod Touch is not an OS. It's not a platform for development. So I don't buy
What do you
that.
mean
I
it's
love
not
the
a
iPod
platform
Touch.
for development?
Yeah, I think that you're missing to say that the iPod Touch isn't all the way open, which is true, isn't to say that it isn't a lot more open than most any other consumer electronic device out there. It's more open than any other game machine, right? Where if you want to publish a game, you have to have a royalty, a PSP or something else in that form. The iPod Touch, if you think about open, one aspect of open is the network effect, right? And how things can benefit from lots of participation. And the iPod Touch and the iPhone have enormous benefits from the network effect of lots of people making the ecosystem better. on the hardware side where there are royalties, but it's still a network effect. And I think that Apple has done that quite well. You can argue that there's a potential for the Android, which is even more open, to possibly have even more of a network effect. The thing you'd have to answer if that's true.
Where does the network effect kick in on these devices?
The network effect kicks in, certainly in the whole app world, on people making things that are compatible with it. Yeah. Having your apps, having websites that are optimized for it, having accessories that are optimized for it. The more people who do stuff that makes your thing more valuable. Your iPhone is more valuable because other people besides you and Apple have used it and done stuff with it. And I would call that a network effect. It's certainly some effect that that is good for users of iPhones.
Is Arthur Sulzberger calling you?
I don't know. I'm trying to make it turn.
Are they making you guys answer the phones now at the Times?
We just have Google Voice here. You know, it just pops up on my screen.
You'll take a call and send it to you. With the transcription, you can actually read, which is a major advantage.
You're mumbling again. Speak up.
You need Ribbit Mobile to answer the phone for you, and it will send you a transcription you can actually read, which is a major advantage.
What is Ribbit Mobile? What does it do?
What it does is broadly what Google Voice does. You redirect your phone to it so that if you don't answer directly, it takes the call for you. It will ring as many phones as you like. At that point, it'll then take a message, transcribe it, and SMS that back to you in a very useful way. And then you've got web access to those as well. So it's got the same thing. The difference is that it's a platform as well. So you can write applications on top of that. That's the piece that's we're starting to roll out now. So basically, developers can write apps that do telephony stuff that runs on top of the Ribbit platform. They can either hook into the Ribbit mobile product, or they can do the telephony stuff directly themselves.
Is it UK only at this point, or is it US only? Where is it launched?
US and UK.
And what's a good app that uses this?
One example that we've got some deep Salesforce integration for people who use the Ribbit platform for that. Another example we've had is an ad campaign for Walmart where they have the ability to make a phone call or send an SMS from inside the ad in the browser. So cool. That's a promotion there. So there's a chunk of stuff like that, and there's other pieces being built now.
All right. Well,
can you charge for it, or is it free?
Can we charge for which?
For your product, for any Ribbit.
So there are pieces where you get charged for it, where you're connecting to the old telephone network, where stuff costs money. There are pieces where it doesn't cost money. The way the payment model is set up such that if you have an account with Ribbit Mobile, the user gets billed, and the developer can write apps, and the user gets billed. Or the developer can write on the Ribbit platform itself, create user accounts, and they get billed, and they work out the billing with the user independently. So we've got both options there. We've even got a third option called Bring Your Own Network, where if you're a carrier, you can use this API on top of a different network and handle all the billing yourself.
Are there apps for phones?
There's one in the iPhone store queue. We've got a m.ribbit.com works on the phones. So I say the HTML5-ness of being able to put an app that runs in browsers works. We haven't got an Android app yet working on that.
The key thing with these is to take over the native dialer on the phone. So if somebody calls you and you hit call back, it uses Google Voice on this to make the call. It's so key, and you can't do that with a browser-based app. And it's right. What Apple freaked out about with their app.
And they freaked out for a really good reason, which is that they took down the carriers by incrementally going after AT&T about just this issue, where the revenue is. I mean, it's not accidental. It's not like they just had a bad day and decided that they were going to not let people do this. It's where all the carrier revenue comes from in the old model, right?
That's not what their official statement said to the government.
Gee, what a shock.
Well, why not just say that? Why not just say this just isn't what we want to do competitively? I respect that more.
Well,
although that's, again, since Google Voice uses the AT&T minutes, technically in this incarnation it's not disintermediating their voice business. It is somewhat on the tech side, and technically they're asserting under presumably penalty of perjury that the that it was Apple that didn't like disintermediating the Apple phone book interface and voicemail interface. And Apple doesn't disagree with that. Apple, there's a big question as to Apple says they're still mulling whether to approve it when everybody else seems to think that it's.
How many people on this call have a landline?
I do. I have several.
In the office, I do.
I do.
Right.
I do, but I never use it.
Right.
Steve, I think the more important question is how many of my children know what a landline is?
Well,
How many children do you have?
3.
And how old is the youngest?
11. All 3 of them, 11 to 24, serenely walk past my landline knowing it's not for them.
right. Well,
The
I
main
haven't.
reason we have kept the landline is I have younger kids than that, and when their friends call, the phone rings in the house, and I don't want to have people calling my cell for a play date, and I'm not getting a 7-year-old a cell phone yet. I'm sure that makes me a dinosaur for not getting a cell phone.
Well, no,
for
it just
my-
makes you
Can I-
naive because we have an
Google
8-year-old
Voice,
who's
and I-
lobbying
and it
for a
sounds-
second one. Go ahead, Mike.
Sorry, Steve. Google Voice, and it sounds like Ribbit is similar or the same. I stopped thinking about phones as identity devices. So I have my home phone, I have this phone. I really have started thinking about I have a phone number, and the phone is just a device to access the phone number. So I'm pointing this phone all over the place. When I get to a hotel, if the hotel has a direct line to the room, and sometimes they do, I point it to the hotel direct line to the room, and then I get the phone numbers that way. If somebody calls me I don't like, I can block them. I can block them on the text message as well. And so it's just such a great sort of piece of identity. It's way better than email. That I don't even think of phones the same way I used to. I don't think of this as my office phone, which is what it is. I think of this as just a device to access my Google Voice ID. So.
Right.
Well, I used to think of you as a journalist, and now I think of you as like this QVC guy that's hyping this.
No, but that's transformative. But that's the thing. Suddenly the phone becomes useful again. I never used to listen to my
Got 4
voicemails.
left. Call this number now.
I actually have to agree with Mike on this. In my new beat, I'm trying to actually use or at least enough of these phones, and the fact that I can go point a number to whatever phone I'm playing with, and frankly, pretty much everything will synchronize with the Google address book, so I can get my phone numbers everywhere. Certainly makes what I'm doing easier, and I basically like it. I just don't want everyone to have my cell phone number, so I still like having an office number because I don't want to
What
get
is
every
it?
last.
Why do
call
you
on my
care? I put
cell
my
phone.
cell phone number on everywhere, on my Twitter account, on my blog, everywhere. That's one reason I just don't get all that hot and bothered by Google Voice. You can call this phone right now. It's 425-205-1921, and I'll answer it. And I don't use any other phone in the world. I use one phone.
I'm not as friendly as you are, Robert.
It's the
I
miracle
never
of
get
social
calls.
media.
Nobody ever calls me.
But the point is that if you don't answer, what happens? And if you've got the thing set up right, if you don't answer, as I was saying, I never used to get my
You know what?
voicemail. Even. Now I get the SMS straight in.
If I don't answer, you'll get my voicemail, which says "Don't leave me a voicemail," and I'll call you back if you've left the caller ID on my phone. I'll call you back.
There's more of that
real easy.
vaunted social media ROI there going on. Yeah. Speaking of which, not to change the subject. Wait.
How's the crunch pad going?
I don't know. I don't know anything about the crunch pad.
Somebody here does.
There's a question about the crunch pad.
I've got the old one in here. The CrunchPad's great, actually. It's actually steamrolling along. Everything's good. The stuff about cost being too high was I don't know where it came from. Actually, costs keep coming down. We've been working entirely on the software for the last month, trying to make it perfect to get it to market. So it's going great. Should be big news on that shortly.
Do you
How do you
think
think
that
it'll compete with the Apple tablet? I mean, we're pulling both out of our ass because we don't know what either looks like. But
well,
I'm
one
not
of
gonna
us-
I'm not gonna answer the question directly. I'll answer it a different way. Apple builds perfect products, and I think that I will probably buy a number of their tablet devices from what I've heard, and I think it'll be amazing. I actually wish Apple would build a much higher end tablet with the MacBook Air hardware, and it's so thin they could get a dual core architecture into a device that thin. It'd be amazing. I think they're going to go a little lower end. But our device isn't. Our device is going to be a significantly less expensive device. It's going to sell for somewhere between $300 and $400. It's going to be a web-only device. It only has a browser. You access the web with it. Hulu, YouTube, Gmail, etc. I think it's just going to be a different market segment. So if you were to put the two devices next to each other, I think that maybe with the exception of the fact that our screen is going to be bigger, our screen is 12 inches as far as I know theirs isn't. I think you'd probably say, yeah, the Apple device is better, but it might be at least twice as expensive and maybe more. And so I think we'll have a nice market segment for...
What's your target selling price these days, Mike?
Our cost remains in the high 200s, sort of all in.
So that's a $500 at retail?
No, I think we're going to sell this sort of between $300 and $400, and there's some soft revenue on the device and sponsorships and things like that, without impacting the user experience. You got to realize we're going to make a few dollars a year from the search bar, just like Firefox does now, without impacting the user experience. And there's some ways I think to keep the costs very low. Also, I'm not doing this I'm not doing this to make money on the device. We have to price it carefully so that we don't go out of business. And that's what we're working on, is to have razor slim margins.
In general, though, what do you think the value proposition is of these types of devices?
Well, it's and I only laugh because some people take this the wrong way, but it's one-handed computing, it's couch computing, it's watching movies, consuming the web in general. When you're on the go or just sitting around by the TV and wanting to look up something on Wikipedia, I think that it's something that people will really like. I think there's tens of millions of units will be sold a few years out from now, just like they are with netbooks. And
do you think the battery life will support this kind of usage?
Yeah, these new chips don't use much power. The Atom architecture, and they're getting more and more powerful. The key next step is to move to OLED screens, which dramatically reduce power consumption, and also the stuff that the Kindle uses, the sort of passive stuff that I forgot what's the company that
E-Ink.
Yeah, the E-Ink stuff. So I think you're getting power usage down so low that you're going to have devices.
Mike, have you looked at the
25%.
Qualcomm's new color E-Ink that they say is going to be out? They were coming by. They have apparently a micro physical thing that actually flips little pieces of colored paper in tiny little pixel sizes.
Yeah, right. I didn't catch the first part of what you said. I think, did you say
the Qualcomm says that by next year they're going to have essentially color e-ink.
Yeah, I think they will. And we've seen demos now of stuff where it's passable video. It looks good. It's never as crisp as an OLED or LCD screen, but it's good stuff, and it's just very low power usage. And so yeah,
I think Mark that Mike is brilliant here. I just think that if you just assume that every surface in your life is going to be a internet connected two-way device, right? So from the light switch to the thing in your phone to the thing where your calendar used to be in your kitchen, and we are that's why I wrote a bunch about the Chumby, not because it was great, but it was taking the space that was your alarm clock and making it a two-way internet device. And I think that as the price comes down to $100 for each of these things, we're going to see them everywhere in a volume that we can't even begin to imagine. And that is the transformation of the next 10 to 15 years.
We have to buy that completely. I mean, everything is a node on the network is pretty much taken for granted. It's how one node is able to address another that becomes more interesting. When you can choose whether your doorbell shows up on your television or not. Right. Those sort of moves are where the SDK and API type routes to say, having defined an environment where everything can be and will continue to be a node on the network, the value proposition comes from giving people at the edge the ability to connect from one to the other relatively seamlessly.
I think not only connect, but actually throw something from one to the other. Ralph de la Vega of AT&T talked about the hypothetical idea that you're reading something at breakfast on your iPhone and you want to show it to your family, and you sort of make a gesture and you throw it and it hops onto your big screen TV in the kitchen, because he wants you to have a TV everywhere too now. And I think that this idea that we want not only to have our stuff everywhere, but to have our stuff know about all of our other stuff, so we can change its form when we move or we change the number of people we're talking to. I don't know who's going to figure that out. I mean, I think Apple has the pieces because they have OS 10 that works on all these platforms. Microsoft has the slogan, 3 screens in a cloud, but they have not been able to manage it. They have things called Windows and Windows Live and all these devices, but they haven't been able to make it work. Ray Ozzie knows what he's supposed to do, but there's no evidence that they're doing it yet. But someone's going to figure it out, and it's going to make a big difference.
Well, but there's also the web is that platform, the glue that runs underneath. That's what's running on all these devices. We have the web on the phone, we have the web on the laptop, we have the web on the TV via
Web
browser.
is necessary but not sufficient. You could do what HTML5 is doing, write extensions, but right now my web session doesn't know enough about me to know about the other devices. So if I have 2 Facebook sessions or 2 web sessions on 2 different devices, there isn't enough knowledge to say, take that photo that I'm seeing on my personal device and put it on my sharing device in any easy way. I have to log in a second time. So there's more work to be done, but that's the next challenge.
That's the point of the sort of the standards and protocols that we've been putting together for a lot of this stuff is to make this stuff viable, so you can move stuff from place to place. And that works. We've been looking at that and moving it from website to website, but that also works moving it from device to device too. I mean, Twitter is the harbinger here in that we tend to use Twitter on lots of different devices at once in different modalities because there's a continuous flow of stuff going by that we can dip into on our phone, or we can search with FriendFeed, or we can use it in the browser. And that's a sort of marker for the future of a lot of this stuff, is that we can tap into the sort of the cloud and the streams and the flow of information in many different places, and we understand how to do that through these devices. And I think I'm not sure you need to bake it in the operating system to be able to sort of throw gestures around. I think we'll be able to work out how to do that without ad hoc to begin with, and maybe they will come up with gestures. We were struck earlier was that we were talking about how you do business card exchanges and phone number exchanges, and the whole idea of beaming them to one another that's been around for 15 years still doesn't happen. What people do is they make a phone call to each other and then take that phone number and put that into their address book. Even something as simple as that, which is an obvious application that people should have solved, doesn't happen. The closest thing we have is that weird iPhone thing where you bump hands, and people played with that for about 3 days and then stopped using it.
Facebook is that though. Facebook, and if you've used any of these phones like the Droid, where it downloads the phone numbers that are people putting their Facebook profiles into your calendar, that's what you want. It's some version of a server-based address book.
Yeah. I mean, that's the point of the portable contact standard, is that it can be served by anyone. So that's supported by Google, and it's supported by a bunch of other sites, but it's not yet supported by Facebook. So yeah, the problem with Facebook is getting the phone numbers out of them requires a business relationship at the moment, which is tricky.
One thing, Mike, that I'm seeing here at the Defrag conference, I'm sitting next to all sorts of people, and they're all looking at different things. Some people are using Google Wave to interact with some part of the audience here. Some people are using Event View to have like a private Twitter stream to the other attendees. Some people are using TweetDeck. Some people are using Seismic. How do you think the CrunchPad is going to empower us to use these different data streams and different modalities, I guess, things that we want to interact with? How is that going to change on a tablet?
Look, I don't know. I mean, I think it's it's a laptop without a keyboard, so it's ergonomically more fun to use, and it has a nice touchscreen. So I think people will find interesting ways to use it.
Don't people think that the uptake of the Kindle is extraordinary?
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't have thought that. We were at the Web 2.0 Summit a couple of weeks ago, and somebody asked the question about how many people in the room had it, and about 40% of the people in the audience raised their hand. I mean, what's going on there?
Amazon.
No.
No. It's what's going on there is people like to read, and this is a way to help people read. But to assume we don't read on these other screens is somewhat mythical.
No, we read, but we sample and we skim. We try and keep up. That's the whole social media thing. That's different than getting a device which is dedicated to reading books.
there was two reasons I bought my Kindle. One, it worked in bright sunlight, and I am on the beach a lot, and I want to use a device to read out on the beach or out on the deck on the Ritz, and that's one reason. Number two reason, Amazon. I can buy books from this device while sitting on the beach, and I can read the New York Times, and I can read TechCrunch, and I can read other things, right? Amazon is the connector is the reason I bought the Kindle. I didn't buy a different device because it didn't let me buy books easily.
Mike, what's the TechCrunch uptake on the Kindle as far as you know?
They have a new device coming out next year. It supposedly isn't much different than the one they have now. I think they're selling 1 million units this year. That's what we estimated. They sold 500,000 last year. It's amazing. I'll tell you what I really like, though. This new Barnes & Noble device, I actually am waiting. I don't have a Kindle right now. I have the old one. I haven't bought the new one. And I'm waiting for the Barnes & Noble device because it looks amazing. And I'm going to try that one out, see what happens. All
right. I want to go around the virtual table once more, and then we'll wrap this up. Starting with JP and, what is BT? Since they're not Telecom anymore and they're not chicken, what are they?
I guess when you don't have a monopoly and when you don't own a mobile company, your behaviors are different, and you're much more focused on being able to deliver service to the customer. You have a choice whether you do that through the closed model or an open model. We have selected an open model, and we're placing our bets as we speak. What we've done with Ribbit is only the beginning of that process, but I think it's the shape of things to come.
All right, well, I'm going to skip Kevin since he says the same thing and go to Saul. Open versus closed, is there really a distinction? I don't think there is.
Well, of course, you're right. These are attributes of things that make a difference depending on what you want. I believe what I said before, which is we see so many ways that when lots of people participate in something, it makes it better. And everything is somewhat open or somewhat closed. Android is open except that Google develops each version secretly, then publishes it. Twitter is open except where it's not. The iPhone is open except where it's not. But it's an important attribute.
Robert?
I've just got to come in on one part of that. You see, the open is fine when you have a vertically integrated set of things that you're doing, and most of what we're imagining today is some variant of that. When you really think of an Internet of Things, right, things that you do not know that will be operating in some form of publish-subscribe mechanism, then trying to be so-called closed and being able to accommodate a plethora of things that today you don't even know about requires you to think differently. So
go ahead.
Yeah.
One place that open is clearly bad is email. Email is too open. There's no central control point, and so bad actors have almost ruined email. And so if somebody said, would you like Facebook to open up their messaging system so that anybody can send something in without any control or choke points or accountability, you would say no, or to any of these things. So there is a balance where putting the right control points potentially can create protections and value for people. It's a tough choice. You have to have benevolent despots, but sometimes a despot is
No,
handsome.
that's Robert. Actually, the Google Wave went way wrong on that. I open up Google Wave on my screen and I see 50 people who I don't even know, and I didn't accept their friendship, and I didn't let them on my screen, and they get access just like they do with email, and it's really bad.
No, I agree, but I think that's two different aspects of this. The SMTP protocol that sends mail is open. And that's why won out over all the other messaging protocols that are around. But what's taking over from that is the ability to control who gets what. That's moving from I have an identifier, I can contact you, to something more subtle where there's some knowledge of what's going on. And the stuff I talked about yesterday about the open standards around the social web is that we have the ability now with OAuth to have each of us see different aspects of it and be differently connected. So there's a permissions model built into the flow on the web such that you don't have. We can put these kinds of selective controls in place that we have. So it's the same thing with the phone number. With the phone number, it used to be that would make your phone ring, and now we can selectively do things depending on who is calling or where you are, and do the same kind of soft routing we're doing with Ribbit and they're doing with Google Voice. That means that the phone number is now actually useful in a way that it wasn't before, because even if I'm not there, something useful will happen. The interaction can work. So the important piece here is the true test for openness is interoperability without knowing each other exists. I think that's what JP was getting at. If you put this stuff up as a specification that anyone can write to, like SMTP, that means that anyone can deal with that and build a device without having to get permission from somebody, without having to do that. The permission to access the data is a separate question from the format the data goes in. So the point of these open specs is to get the stuff in common formats and then have a separate layer to decide who gets to see which part of it.
Absolutely.
All right, Robert, last point, and Mike was too interested in what you all were saying, so he wanted to sneak out rather than interrupt. So, Robert, the last word is for you.
The Droid is an interesting phone. I don't think it beats the iPhone yet, but I think it's coming on strong, and you can see the momentum. This is a momentum-shifting device where from now on, Android is going to be on top.
All right. I want to thank, first of all, our sponsor, Rackspace, for all that they've been doing to bring this show back to the air. And Saul hasn't been on the gang in some time now, at least a year. And it's great to have you back. And we're excited now that you're going to have all this free time just covering the carriers, that you'll be able to do this again. Can I count on you?
Happy to be back anytime.
Okay. And JP Rangaswami, it's a delight to have you on the show finally. And,
My pleasure.
And Kevin Marks, as always. And I want to thank Mike Arrington. And this is Steve Gillmor. This has been the Gillmor Gang. I want to thank everybody who showed up, and especially those who didn't. We'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.